You know what? After suffering through Redfall, I think I've earned myself something nice. Believe it or not, I have wanted to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, the video game, for a little over a year now after I first played it. Normally, I prefer to give as little money as possible to the giant rat and its corporate subsidiaries, but when I saw who made Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, I made an exception. You see, Guardians of the Galaxy, the video game, was developed by Eidos Montreal, creators of the Deus Ex prequels, which I love so much. I came into Guardians expecting a sad whimper from my favorite studio getting beaten down by Design by Decree and being banished to the Marvel mines by Swear, but I came out with Guardians of the Galaxy being my favorite thing from anything related to Marvel, comic, movie, or whatever in the last decade. It's reassuring to see that even with Square banishing their Western properties to crappy tie-in deals, Eidos wasn't going down without a fight. As you might know, I have quite a few pictures of Frisk, my cat, and I need a good place to display them all. Well, it's a good thing that like Twitter and Discord, and if I really needed to, I could start a Pinterest page, like all those things exist, because we don't do sponsors here, that's stupid. Instead, let's take the rest of this minute to enrich your life. I do a lot of surprise cooking segments on this channel, so let's go over the basics of how you hold your work knife. What you want to do is rather than have all your fingers around the handle, close your pointer finger and then use the side of it and your thumb to pinch the knife at the base of the blade so that you're able to control the direction that the blade points. This makes things much safer since you're much less likely to have the knife get away from you, and in the event that it does, you have a lot more control to stop it before things go from bad to a trip to the ER. Make sure to bring in your fingers on your other hand just like so, and if you're feeling comfy with yourself, gently rest the side of the knife against the flat part of your fingers like your knuckles over here to help control the knife as it moves. Be careful though, go at your own speed. Don't do what you see in the fancy cooking shows, do what you are capable of doing and the skill will come. I make no exaggeration when I say that this is the best Marvel thing in the last decade. Eidos' GOTG is faithful to the source material, it's fun, it's engaging, and successfully avoids a lot of the pitfalls that the Marvel movies and now the shows have fallen into in recent years, particularly the absurd amount of homework you need to do in order to understand some pointless little detail in the mainline movies. And yes, while I don't keep up with Marvel, or at least the MCU, very much these days, pretty much everything that isn't one of the major movies seems to have devolved into what is essentially homework that you have to pay for the privilege of doing in order to understand like a crucial part of the next big tentpole movie, and who the heck wants to do that? Guardians of the Galaxy, the game, is a straightforward story that you can go into without needing to watch 17 movies, 4 shows, and read through some producer's old blogspot page to get into, and you'll come out of it enjoying the character interactions, the use of the source material, and also it's just a pretty good game, albeit a bit simplistic in some places. Well, at least simplistic for what the developers are usually doing. If you're really into Marvel, you'll get a ton out of all the little nods that are put in that aren't mandatory things you need to understand for the story. And if you aren't, this game is easily accessible for you to get up to speed without needing to go trolling through the wikis. Honest to goodness, this is some of the best writing I've seen in a video game in ages, and I'm happy that I took a chance on this. The core gameplay loop of Guardians of the Galaxy is simple enough at first, but this is from the people who made the Deus Ex prequels. You can get crazy with it even if it's not an immersive sim. You play as Star-Lord and only Star-Lord, which on the heels of the Avengers Games as a Service nightmare is a breath of fresh air, as your main shtick is that you just shoot stuff. You shoot with your little blasters, you fire a charge shot, do reload tricks, and you can use your jets for dodging and getting a bit of verticality. Over the course of the game, your cool guns will get even cooler with 4 special abilities that are each kinda sorta based on an element, which act partly as your way around certain obstacles and partly as hard counters to specialized enemies. The nice part though is that special abilities aren't just limited to hard countering. Pretty much anyone is gonna have a bad time if you freeze them or yank them across the map to right in front of you. What's amazing is that despite most of this game being running through a few corridors, shooting whoever you see, and then getting into big arenas to shoot whoever you see, it never gets stale. There's always some sort of quirk of the arena or some cool set piece that makes this fight special, and the fights themselves are well spaced out. Contrast this with the other Marvel-based game where you had to run around the same time as like, okay, actually these were a year apart now that I think about it, but you know, time got really weird during the pandemic. But in the games as a service Avengers, things got stale really fast despite having a whole roster of characters to control, and you can really appreciate Eidos' sense of pacing here. It also helps that while you're playing as one character, you have 4 other teammates that are helping you out with their own set of abilities. For most of the game, Gamora, Drax, Rocket, and Groot are all by your side, and each of them have their own suite of abilities that play well to their character. Rocket has lots of guns, Drax is strong, Gamora is a blade master, Groot is Groot. Everyone's abilities are extremely handy, such as Groot's ability to pin down a single enemy to focus in on them, or Drax being able to throw something really heavy at bad guys. What's even better is that everyone's moves synergizes with everyone else's moves. Have Rocket do a ton of damage to a single strong unit while Drax picks up some poor guy and spins him around for crowd control. Have Groot use his vines to pin someone down so that Gamora can just wail on them with all her special abilities. Just have a good time in general. One of the biggest reasons why the combat never gets stale is because there's just so many different permutations of abilities you can use with different characters, and the arenas just become a big playground for trying out whatever you just unlocked. Everyone also has their own special abilities in the overworld, like Groot creating platforms or Rocket messing with electronics. Most of these boil down to platforming or bridge puzzles, but they're really just an opportunity to hear more character banter or maybe find some cool secrets. On the note of banter, Guardians of the Galaxy is very walkie-talkie. Sure, eventually in combat you'll hear some lines repeated in the really long fights, but that's not what you're here for. Everyone has their own take on the situation at hand, and this is easily some of the best, if not the best, banter I have heard in a video game. The writing is on point, the voice actor delivery is so good you're going to have a hard time choosing between if you like this iteration of Guardians or you like the movies, and the backdrops for these conversations are never dull. Throughout the game you'll have the option to pick a side between 2 characters when the conversation inevitably turns into an argument, and you're reminded that Star-Lord is indeed the leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Star-Lord is genuinely making an effort to call the shots in a way that keeps everyone together and at their best. One of my favorite things about this game is talking to the crew between missions, and it feels like the best parts of the original Mass Effect trilogy, just going to see where everyone's hanging out and checking up on them. Whenever you're given the option to take a side or make a call, I had to genuinely stop and consider how everyone would react to what I had to say, and that if it's the best way to keep the team together and functioning. Hell, Star-Lord's ultimate ability is literally to call the team together for a pep talk where you will have to figure out what you need to say and inspire the team, which will bring them back to full health. If you whiff it, nothing happens, which is rather embarrassing. The banter has also helped quite a bit by, you know, how you're never in a dull place. You're sliding down a frozen mountain, you're exploring the markets of nowhere, you're having a spirit journey inside one of your teammates' heads. Lots of cool stuff like that. There's even some moments out of level where you can stop and just have a genuine moment with your teammates, and I love it. This is like the character development you need in something like a Marvel game where you're just really exploring this huge universe that has been built, like, God, 80 years of Marvel now, however many years it's been a very long time, and Eidos takes advantage of all that time and everything that's been built up. And this isn't necessarily cosmic Marvel, but more like, I guess, intergalactic Marvel. We aren't really dealing with any like cosmic entities here. There's a bunch of costumes and collectibles for your team too, and unlike the 100 gigabytes of sin that is Marvel's Avengers, you don't need to pay for them or grind for them. Just explore the maps like this was an actual video game. Also, unlike the Avengers games as a service, they aren't all like crappy games of a service style recolors or random like mobster skins, but they're from previous comic arcs. I can't tell you where all these come from, but they're really cool. And there is a bit of an explanation when you like mouse over them in the codex. Speaking of which, the game has its own codex for all the cool stuff you'll come across, which is great for brushing up on your lore, but never required to enjoy the game. Again, I am getting huge Mass Effect vibes here, like the ship banter and just how well Guardians of the Galaxy takes advantage of world building. And of course, even if this isn't part of the hellscape known as the MCU, which is part why I like it so much, there are going to be a ton of Easter eggs you're going to find. I won't spoil too much of them, and I'll go into more depth about world building later, maybe, but there's a good chance you've probably already seen something in the footage you recognize that isn't strictly Guardians of the Galaxy. Again, I appreciate that these are just little prizes for people that have some familiarity to the comics, and not just like, oh, you need to do your homework to understand anything. And it wouldn't be an Eidos game without them breaking my heart and secretly making cries for help in regard to some of these Easter eggs, which are all nods to Deus Ex. Everywhere in Guardians of the Galaxy, from finding the series logo on the ship to Star-Lord's dog being Kubrick, like Adam Jensen's dog, which I don't think was ever in the comics that Star-Lord had a dog as a kid, to hearing the music from the Hive nightclub at the bar in Nowhere. Originally, part of this outline was a much more somber section, but I started writing this before the Embracer buyout, and now this feels more like it's a sign that you can take the ImSim developers out of making ImSims, but you can't take the ImSim developer quality out of your games. If that makes any sense. I'm just kind of winging it here. I gotta be honest, my brain is still partially fried from attempting to comprehend Redfall. Guardians of the Galaxy, the video game, is Marvel done right. Once upon a time, young Charles not only read, but loved his comic books. Heck, I still have a copy of Spider-Man number 300, Venom's first appearance, on my wall in my office. Frankly, I also got pretty lucky that the Flash Venom arc was a pretty good series, since I also have some of the older Venom standalones, and they're very 90s, let's just say. Either way, seeing the Raimi Spider-Man movies as a kid, not so much the third one, which was a big come to Jesus moment for childhood me, where I discovered movies can be bad, and then seeing Iron Man break the Cape movie curse was awesome growing up. Before I realized just how much I loathed the mouse for a myriad of reasons, it was amazing to see one solid adaptation after another culminate into the first Avengers movie. And then after that, we somehow got a Guardians of the Galaxy flick, which turned out to go gangbusters, and if you ignored the blatant member berries they put everywhere, which wasn't as severe back then and also was a core part of Star-Lord's persona, it was the goodness that MCU was using to kill it at the time. And also it was a nice break from the comics because they were doing some extraordinarily stupid things in the main series. Then the MCU got bloated, movies started existing only to serve as a purpose for excusing a cameo in the big tentpole movies, and it getting more and more obvious that any edge or nuance some character might have had back in the comics was getting sandblasted off to appease the core demographic and not getting them banned in certain nations. Hell, I would not be surprised if certain movies or characters were only ever introduced into the MCU so that a Funko Pop could be made in Seoul. By the time Infinity War had came out, my wife and I only really went to see it because we knew that I at least would be obligated to talk about that at work with people that come in who thought they were smart for browsing Reddit on their lunch breaks. One pandemic later, and we've hit the state that we're in now, where so much of the MCU feels like it's just filler, like it's paid homework that you have to do so that you'll get some reference despite it never going deeper than like surface level crap. And yes, I am still salty that my favorite hero in Marvel, Beta Ray Bill, was reduced to a half-second cameo in Ragnarok that is blink and you'll miss it, and that the real Stormbreaker is just some tchotchke in the queue for the lazily repainted Tower of Terror turned into the Guardians of the Galaxy ride. Bill was able to solo Galactus, and this is what he gets in the MCU? You know what, come to think of it, Bill was briefly a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy, so he could have been here too, but I don't think the timeline lines up because they mention like where exactly they are early in the game, like time-wise. But let's contrast this with how GotG the game handles Marvel. Eidos' Guardians of the Galaxy treats the greater universe of Marvel like just that, a wider world that we might see bits and pieces of, but are in no way required to consume outside material if we want to fully enjoy the story. I don't need to go watch a 6-part series on Disney Plus, which I will never give them money for, that has like their episodes spaced out just enough to where they can get the maximum return based on focus group studied breaking points for how long I'll subscribe just to figure out who the heck Lady Hellbender is. Her character is fully explained and fleshed out in game, and if I want to know more, there is an in-game codex entry which gives me a nice little summary and references to other series that she's been in. Nowhere is presented as a hub for people like the Guardians, and not as something designed to cram in as many references as possible to get people engaging with different products. I don't need to have an extensive knowledge of the history of the Nova Corps, because right now, they're just perfectly portrayed as the space cops that are a pain in the Guardians' asses. And everything is paced out in a way where nothing is just a cameo, but something that is part of the story we're being told through the POV of the Guardians. Lastly, I also really liked how GotG doesn't alter things to make the big heroes seem more important, but keeps the older continuity. Mainly that originally it was Drax to be the one that takes down Thanos. But who am I kidding? There's so much continuity now that we're pretty much doing SCP or Warhammer 40k rules where everything is and is not canon at the same time because there is simply so much of it. Another thing that I'll comment on is that I really like how there is not a single, well, that just happened in this game. Everything is taken seriously and everyone is sincere. It's a personal pet peeve of mine, which is especially present in current MCU, and how everyone must be self-aware at all times about how potentially silly a situation might look to an outsider, say a person looking in at the entire reality from the outside. That's cowardly. That's a desperate attempt to be constantly winking and nodding at the audience that you're in on some kind of joke, when the joke is just your normal. It is the normal of the world. Come to think of it, a lot of the current MCU writers would be very well off to go and rewatch Arnold Schwarzenegger's Last Action Hero, which is the best take on just accepting the world you're in that I've ever seen. In the meantime though, through the misuse of irony and being overly self-aware, it's become the most frustrating thing I've seen in movies or media of any kind, because if the people in the world we're observing cannot take the stakes of the world seriously, why should we take any of this seriously? It's almost like some poor kid in a hallway intentionally tripping himself before the jocks can in front of everyone, because by some kind of sad internal logic, they think if they do it to themselves, it makes them in on the joke, and therefore everyone isn't laughing at them, they're laughing with them. See, he's cool now, right? Right? Of course your heroes are going to have over-the-top names and fantastical costumes to go with their fantastical abilities. That's the whole point of a world with superheroes. Stop trying to pretend that you are too cool for the world you live in. What is so wonderful about Eidos' Guardians of the Galaxy and its take on the Marvel Universe is that even though you're playing as a snarky group of misfits that are only really heroes according to their business cards, no one ever drops the "well, that just happened" line. Seriously, if that line is never used in a movie again, it will be too soon. It's not that crap that, oh gee, these Nova Corps guys sure are a pain in our butts, you know, despite them not really being a legitimate authority and just going around the world thinking they're the space police, like, isn't that pretty wild? No, it's, crap, we got busted by Nova Corps again and we gotta pay a fine. We're already strapped for cash, so this is bad. Without spoiling too much about the game's plot outside of the story segment I might do, the Guardians spend most of the game going from one scam to another, desperately trying to get out ahead or at least break even. And the only time anyone ever says like a, well, this is stupid thing, is the moment where they poke fun at a certain code, which is Eidos hinting at the kind of game they actually want to make, and frankly, in the context of the world and how high of a security the thing they are breaking into is, a 4-digit code seems like a very bad idea. And thanks to this sincerity, I can get much more invested in the world of spacefaring Marvel through Eidos' take on it than anywhere in the MCU. Because you can just take it all in and never get yanked out of your immersion by someone trying to be self-aware. Alright, time to do the cooking segment. If you're new here, we just do these. There is no rhyme or reason to it. Sticking to the theme of things I genuinely enjoy, we're doing some nana bread. The first and foremost thing you need to know about making banana bread of any kind is that for the love of all that is good and your wallet, do not buy fresh bananas for your nana bread. Just like the general grocery and the meat departments of your local store, the produce department also has a manager special section where you can buy deeply discounted items that are close to their date but still edible. Bananas brown pretty fast, and we want them browned out anyway, because that's how you get the best tasting banana bread. So just ask someone working there where the manager special bin is, and there's probably going to be at least a few bunches of bananas in there because they go fast. Get as much as you need, maybe fridge them for a few days so they go from spotty to full on brown for maximum sugar, and then we're ready to bake. Time to make the batter. And yes, it is more of a batter than a dough. You don't want this stuff dry. Peel and break up all your bananas into a big old bowl. Then, once you've got them all in, take a potato masher or maybe like a large fork or something, and then just get to mashing, man. Just go to town on them. It's gonna start out looking not so good, and you're gonna see the little ends of the bananas just going all over the place, but after a couple of minutes, it'll turn out to be nice and mashy. Just have some faith in yourself. Oh, and I almost totally spaced on this, but also you'll need to combine your brown sugar with your butter. And for your butter, it would do you very well to have it softened. How do you soften your butter? Really just take it out of the fridge the morning you want to make this. Butter is shelf stable for a good while. It's just better to keep it in the fridge because instead of a shelf life of weeks, it has a fridge life of months. Just go ahead and mix your butter with your brown sugar. Just keep on mixing it till it becomes a sort of creamy, pasty-like substance, and then mix your beaten eggs into that substance, mix that into the bananas, and then mix the wet stuff stuff with the dry stuff, and there's your nanner batter. A lot of folks like walnuts in their nanner bread, but I'm personally more of a pecan man. And what's nuts without chocolate? Grab a thing of halved pecans and set them aside before taking a couple bars of like the nice chocolate of your choice. I'm going for milk chocolate here, and using a sturdy knife to just chop it up. You want to specifically not cut along the pre-made lines because we want to go for non-uniform chunks here so that every bite is special. You're gonna want to get some big chunks in there, but you also want those small shavings from the cuttings that will make the whole thing chocolatey throughout. Now, one of the reasons we prep these and set them aside later on is because we don't want to add this stuff until the batter is completely mixed. If you try to add your fixins before the batter is fully mixed throughout, there'll be pockets of flour around all the nuts and chocolate bits and the bread won't cook right. So only add in those pecans and chocolate until the main batter is 100% good to go. Baking time! Take as many bread pans as you need, since when dealing with things like bananas, there's never really going to be an exact amount of volume for like what you're doing, more of just a general vibe. Spray those pans down good and pour your nanner batter into the pans until there's about half an inch or a centimeter and change of play in there. This stuff rises a bit as it cooks, so we don't want it overflowing. Now, set your oven to 350 degrees of freedom heat units, and once that's all preheated, toss in your nanner loaves for about an hour and 15 minutes. Now, when it comes time to pull them out, the usual toothpick method isn't gonna work here. You see, while the upside of adding big chunks of chocolate into your batter is that now there is chocolate in your banana bread, the downside is that if you stick a toothpick or skewer into the loaf, there's a potential for a false negative, since you could unwittingly go through a large chunk of chocolate and think the bread isn't fully solidified and cooked through yet. Use a thermometer to check, and make sure they come out to at least 165 freedom heat units so you avoid salmonella. Again, use the temperature because you don't want to accidentally overcook your banana bread and make it all like dry and stale like right out of the oven. Once they're temped out, use a spatula or something flat along the sides of your loaf pans and then deposit your finished loaves onto a wire cooling rack. Now comes the hardest part. Do not eat these for at least 30 minutes after you pull them out. They need to cool. And I mean, like, you theoretically can, but you really shouldn't, because it's gonna be really hot and it'll mess with the overall structure of your loaves. Interested in trying this out for yourself? Well, over at patreon.com/charlatanwonder, you can get the full recipe for this and all the other cooking segments I do on this channel, on top of a couple other cool perks. Actually, a bunch of cool perks. Check it out. Now let's get back to Guardians of the Galaxy. Okay, let's actually talk about story elements and maybe some plot details. The first thing, which is again a breath of fresh air for a Marvel thing, is that this isn't the umpteenth time we've got the team together, or the final part of some octology we need to watch. The Guardians are already well established, and if anything, a little past their prime in the adventure we're with them on. It's implied through story elements and the conversation that the Infinity War happened a while ago, and in this take on the Guardians, while Star-Lord is trying his best to keep the momentum going, the gang's on hard times and struggling to make ends meet. The start of the game is the Guardians doing some very illegal and very dangerous things, like breaking into a quarantine zone to look for a monster to sell the Lady Hellbender. Nothing about this is a good idea, but they're strapped for options right now. And then, after a series of events that in no way goes right for anyone, the gang is off on an adventure where things go from bad to really, really bad. Apocalyptically bad. And along the way, we get to explore the arcs of the crew. I'm gonna make the Mass Effect reference here again, because it very much does feel like Mass Effect 2 or the first game, where as you spend more time with your companions, they'll open up to you more and have their own takes about things that you just did. This eventually culminates in a big moment for them, which can happen both in or out of combat, and that's how you unlock the character's ultimate ability. It makes that ability feel meaningful because while you can selectively use your XP to get whatever abilities that a character has that you like, you have to have that breakthrough with the character where they open up to Star-Lord and the rest of the Guardians about a past trauma that affects their lives now, or overcoming something that's haunted them to get the good stuff, because they'll only do that if they're truly bonding with the team. This bonding isn't strictly through combat either. Over the course of the game, you'll need to order teammates to do their thing to get you through an area, like Rocket getting into an access panel, or Drax picking up and moving something heavy, and eventually, as you grow closer to the team, you stop having to ask them to do it, because the team's fully in sync. It's not a linear path though. The Guardians do get upset at each other, or they don't like their role in the plan. They'll run off, they'll get enthralled by an evil entity, or Peter Quill can just say the wrong thing. There's a moment in the game where the crew is bickering about a recent screw up, and Peter just loses it and snaps at them, and it's a huge oh shit moment for the whole Guardian team. It's like hearing a parent swear for the first time, and the team is in utter shock after they realize they pushed Star-Lord that far before everyone retreats to their room. The Guardians feel like they're actually a team that's bonded with each other, and what is the ultimate antithesis to like that wooden crap we got in the games as a service Avengers story. And of course, this is the Guardians, not the Avengers, so the game has an actual sense of humor. Stuff like finding out that thing that Lee tried to get for Lady Hellbender, like she's just got like 24 of them just hanging around her castle grounds, so now somebody has to go get in the cage and pretend to be a monster so we can sell them to her, and we'll bust you out later, promise. The team is just going from one fumble to another with hilarious results, and along the way, there's a great supporting cast of characters that they run into. While I'm on the fence about which iteration of the Guardians I like between the movies and the game, I definitely like this game's iteration of Mantis more because she's the full-on celestial Madonna in this, and she's just having a ball with all the infinite possibilities she sees. She's like the Lutece twins from BioShock, but fun! Lady Hellbender does great as the person who's taking her role in the world 110% seriously and just hamming it up, especially whenever she's within 50 feet of Drax. I don't think there's a single character in this game that doesn't at least have one great moment. Okay, time to get into spoilery stuff. Go to the timestamp if you know what? No. We're not doing a plot summary, because I want you to play this damn game. It's good, the story is good, and you will be better off for experiencing it yourself. I will tell you that it draws a lot from things the Guardians have done in the past on the page and much less in the movie, but if you don't know any of that stuff, you'll be fine. Even up to the credits, this game has some serious whammies in it, and I don't want to ruin them for you, so take the time to play this game for yourself. Yeah, it's full price after a year and a half, and it's a single player experience, but I got 17 hours out of my first playthrough, which for a linear shooter is quite the story. It also recently got fully verified for Steam Deck if you own one of those, but don't take my word on any of this. Go play the game for yourself and see that there was truth to all the stuff I was hyping up. And you know what? I guess I'm just making a habit of talking about graphics, but just since we're not gonna talk about story, just God, look at this game. It is beautiful. Look at these scenes. Look at the attention to detail on the character models. Look at the everything on this game. This Guardians of the Galaxy is about the same size as Redfall. And unlike Redfall, which we just discussed looks ugly as all sin, every kilobyte of Guardians of the Galaxy's install size goes to making it good. It looks good. It sounds good. I can't really show you any of the sound design because a lot of it is copyrighted music, but just so much love and respect for the source material went into this game. It is again, the antithesis of the MCU. I love this thing. It's just wonderful. Sure, it's not a massively emerging gameplay extravaganza, but in the linear story, it tells a wonderful story, and it's fun, simple gameplay. Yes, even a weirdo like me that digs through the trough in the bottom of the Steam recommendations looking for immersive sims can still love a dumb action shoot 'em up if that action shoot 'em up is just made with such beautiful graphics and wonderful attention to detail. Put this in your Steam cart already. It takes a lot for a guy like me who hates all things Disney to like a Marvel thing, and it's the best Marvel thing we've had in a decade. It reminds me why I love the comics growing up as a kid. It's faithful to the comics without being overly reliant on you knowing a ton of stuff, and it does better than pretty much any of the movies since the original Avengers in 2012. I don't know what else I can say here. This is just, it's great. It's Eidos at its best. I love it. If I had to summarize the experience that was Eidos' Guardians of the Galaxy, I'd say that it was supposed to be a mediocre game that was made by an extraordinary team. Square was very much mishandling their Western studios in their later years before pawning them off or dumping them onto a Marvel license, and it seemed like it was them banishing studios for the crimes of the executives not understanding the kind of games they made. The Avengers Games as a Service nightmare is an excellent case study of that and designed by decree. I don't think that Avengers game is a representation of the kind of stuff that Crystal Dynamics makes or the talent of their developers in the slightest, and I breathed a sigh of relief when I saw in the credits that while Eidos Montreal was in the titles for that game, they only lended a few people to map design and the rest were working on GotG. I'm so happy that Eidos decided not to let Square get them down and really flexed all the writing and world building muscles they had built up reviving the Deus Ex series to make one of the best stories I've seen in a game to date, and combine it with some simple but extremely solid and highly variable gameplay, and make the best biggest thing with the name Marvel on it since 2012's Avengers. I hope whatever Embracer Group has Eidos working on, and please, please, please let that be another Deus Ex, that Embracer respects that Eidos Montreal is an extremely talented studio whose last game did indeed win awards despite everything being stacked against them. Now, there's one caveat to all of this. Mary DeMerle, the lead writer for Eidos Montreal on this and the Deus Ex prequels, is no longer at Eidos. She got hired by BioWare, and with the references I've made to the Mass Effect games earlier in this video, I think they might have poached her in an attempt to make some kind of ritual to bring the BioWare magic back. Good luck with that, Miss DeMerle. I think you might need it. That being said, based on the credits, it seems like DeMerle did a good job of positioning her team for her exit, and maybe this will be a chance for a new lead writer to take the game dev world by storm. No matter what though, this game gives me hope that one day we'll get a new Deus Ex, and that the team behind it is definitely up to the task. I know they can succeed, and I hope that we get a chance to see their success under Embracer sooner rather than later. And you know, I'm kind of happy I waited as long as I did to make this video, because it had a very different tone before the Embracer buyout. Before, this was about Guardians of the Galaxy being the swan song for Eidos Montreal as they were banished to the Marvel mines. But now, it's a story about how you can't keep a good studio down, even if some clueless executive on the other side of the world has no idea how to handle them or frankly any of their companies. Go out and play this game already. Even if you don't like Marvel, it's a genuinely good story. That's gonna do it for today. Don't worry everyone, the suffering will resume shortly. We've got a couple leaks left before the System Shock remake finally drops. In the meantime, if you'd like to get these videos early and help me keep on making these videos, I do run a Patreon over at patreon.com/charlatanwonder, where you can help me and get a bunch of cool stuff like unobstructed 4K cat clips. And if you can't or won't, that's totally cool. I understand. You can also help me out at no extra cost to yourself by liking this video if you enjoyed it, so that others might get a chance to enjoy it too. Now let's do our end spiel. Remember that no matter what you do, be it baking cool looking cakes, pixel art, or doing sick backflips at the park, what you do is not content. It is art. Content is a word that's been twisted into meaning a way to grind up all your passions and skills and dreams into a useless gray slop meant for the mindless consumption and service of an analytics page. Your art is better than that. Your art is a reflection of you by the nature of its creation, and no one deserves to be reduced into just content, especially not you. So get out there and fight against content. Fight for yourself by fighting for everything that is your art. Stay saucy, everyone. Before I let you go, though, I've got a few patron-requested detective voice things to say. First off, trans rights are human rights. Can they properly see? Maybe we should take the noir filter. Yeah, that'll do. Next up, I never asked for this. Do you have a single fact to back that up? What a shame. And finally, for now, I honestly can't think of a single thing for you to say in that cool voice, but please say something cool like the last time. It was really good. Well, okay. Done. Yeah, I'm really excited for Shadows of Doubt. It's already, in the short time it's been up, received 5 good patches on further advancing the quality of the game, and I'm chomping at the bit to get into it again, but I don't necessarily think it would be appropriate to make a whole video based off, say, one small gameplay update they do. Gonna have to wait till full release. Come to think of it, never did a video on Cruelty Squad's full release. In the meantime though, screw it. If you want to pledge just for getting me to say something in the noir voice, I'll gladly keep this open as a soft offer. You know where to find me.
Sir, you're being sassy. What was that sass? Sassy little loaf. Who left this sassy loaf here? Oh, you don't want to own up to it. Oh yeah, just sniff the air. Sassy loaf. Sassy loaf. Sassy loaf. Love, love, love. But geez, we're gone for less than an hour. Oh, now you're playing it cool. Like, oh, I'm not sad that you were gone. Can I sit here? Can I sit here with you? Is this okay? Can I give you a pet? Have some father-son bonding time? Some chin scritches? What time is... Oh, your snack should dispense soon, so you're going to be schmoovin' in a moment. He's looking out to the direction of, like, where his snack dispenser is. Oh, you know that word. You sassy little loaf. Okay, we're done. That was a warning bite.